Hello, it is Fast Facts and Features with me, the brand ambassador for ethical flooring. Kevin, I am just before we're in our own little green room before we come on. It's funny, you got your green chair behind you there. About this topic, it's just brought up so many amazing learning moments that you've shared with us. So I'm excited to kind of wrap up this section of Fast Facts and Myths Month about this whole tile floor video that got me my juice pumping about using it as a subfloor. So are you ready for my questions today, Kevin?
Let's go. I have, to those viewing, I don't know what they are. So we'd love to ad lib here and see what comes out of my mouth. So far, I hope it's been helpful, and let's finish it up today.
Okay, so I wanted to share, just to kind of wrap up, I have two very small stories. And first of all, I want to say anybody that tunes on live on our Facebook page, we thank you very absorbing these incredible learnings that Kevin is sharing with us. Oh, that was weird. Kevin, are you coming back? Oh, that was weird. My internet is fantastic. So just a little blip there. So a little story I wanted to share with you is when I was a project manager and we were over radiant floor heat, and there was a section of the entry that had to come out. It was tile that was in there, and then the rest of the house had hardwood. And the homeowner kept on micromanaging the project manager. Sorry, not the project manager. Tried to project manage me. I was the project manager on the job. It was the job in Squamish. And he kept on saying, oh, well, the internet says you should do it this way. The internet says you should do it that way. The internet. And it was so incredibly frustrating. So what has been your experience with homeowners coming at you, Kevin, saying, well, the internet has said this, this, and this when it comes to doing subfloor prep?
Yeah, thankfully it's been less impactful than it could have been. It's funny as you're mentioning that. Sorry, they're just doing some fire alarm testing here.
Okay.
Oops. The first time I heard about internet stuff that really came to it was actually through physicians that my wife had gone to, and he was already, this is way back when, 20 years ago or more, he was already pretty annoyed that that people are coming and telling him what their issue was, and he wrote a prescription or whatever. He says, I'm sure you'll go and do whatever you think because of the internet, right? But it's true. And to be flat out, the number of dumb things that I've read on the internet about flooring is incredible. It really, really is.
Yeah.
I wonder where these things come from, and whether they're just almost bots writing content, or whether they're people that have no idea about the industry that are paid to write content. A lot of it is just absolutely atrocious. And it's, from time to time, we do get, people coming in and say, what about this? Not so much with the subfloor prep, which is interesting. We really pride ourselves in providing a lot of knowledge to the client from right when they walk through the door about the subfloor prep. So I think just we come off as knowledgeable, and there's not a lot of pushback. Where we have seen things is, for instance, like a carpet style or something that, I'd say people only go onto the internet typically to complain, right? So if 100 million people have bought a product and 1,000 of them are unhappy with it, you're going to see those thousand online on complaining, but not the happy ones. And so I have run into that with a particular carpet technology that, from my experience, has been almost perfect out of probably 10,000 clients that I've sold it to at this point. But somewhere on the internet, there's someone unhappy with it. And of course, you can't make a good, you can't manufacture something that there isn't going to be somebody that's unhappy. And quite often they've abused what they owned, and then they complain about it. But yeah, it's interesting. We'll keep an eye on it, but for the most part, it hasn't been a huge issue, which I'm thankful for.
Yeah, the particular customer that I was regaling the story is, I asked him, I said, so where did you get the information from? I said, what did you read? And it happened to be that it was in a high rise that he had read this information, and he happened to be in a house on plywood on
Yeah.
radiant floor heat, and it's like, can we compare a potato and a potato, please, and not a kumquat and a potato, and get back to work and doing our best work for you. Our installers at Ethical really know how to do it well. Well, that's fun. You know what? It's very refreshing, Kevin, that it's on your side. That there's now some issues and things. So let's get into kind of, okay, we've decided it's the finale. It's like, okay, we're not going to subfloor prep this. We're not going to put carpet. We're not going to, buff it up and get a tap on. It's time to take it out. We're gonna take it out. So realistically, what equipment is going to be brought on site? What does the site going to look like while it's going on? And typically, let's say 500 square feet of tile that have to come up. What does the timeline look like?
Yeah, I mean, the equipment is pretty basic. It's a jackhammer, a handheld jackhammer for the most part.
Okay.
And so what can you expect? It's going to be noisy. There's going to be dust created. It's going to look like a war zone at certain points during the process. Don't get concerned about that. We will clean up when we're done. But yeah, you're going to have shards and pieces of tile that are just kind of stacked all over the place, and it'll look like a complete disaster. Then the flooring, the subfloor itself, quite often the mortar, because there's two components to a tile installation. There's the tile itself, and then there's the mortar that was used to adhere the tile. And quite often the mortar is going to be left behind after the tile is removed. And at that point, again, we have to make an assessment based on experience, whether it's best to continue to try and grind that mortar off, or are we going to apply self-leveling compound over top of it to basically encapsulate it and create a new, because quite often we're going to have to level anyway. So, but again, that's one of those things that you do based on experience. What's going to be the most cost effective for the client and, provide the best outcome. So I would just say have patience during the process. Like I said, it will be clean and look pretty at the end, but it's going to be noisy and a bit of a mess in the meantime. And then in terms of removal time,
so recommend. Wow. Okay. Sorry, I cut you off there for a second. I'm just so interested in this topic. I have so many questions I want to ask you.
Let me just quickly answer about removal time. It's highly dependent. I mean, we have tiles that you kind of look at. We have some tile floors that you kind of talk to it sternly, and they start to pop off, right? Because they weren't installed correctly to begin with. And other times, the initial installer did a really good job, and perhaps there was an anti-fracture membrane that was used, and now you're talking extremely tough scenario at that point. So the time frame is highly variable. 500 square feet could take a day, or it could take a week. And everything in between. So unfortunately, we don't know until we start and we find out how well it's bonded and what bonding materials were used. And that's part of the fun of demolition. You don't really know what you're getting into until you start.
Right. So that bears. Oh my gosh, I have 2 questions, and I hope I can remember the second one. The first one immediately. Okay, I've got tile over radiant, which is very prevalent, especially into powder rooms and things like that. So what's the methodology there? Because you have to protect if it's either the hot water pipes or it's the coils that are used. What's your methodology or way that you do removal that way?
Yeah, you have to be careful. You have to be definitely more careful. In a typical hydronic, hot water heated system, the pipes are supposed to be 1.5 inches below the surface of the concrete.
Okay.
So there's quite a bit of playroom there. Of course, that doesn't always happen, and sometimes the pipes do get up to the surface, and it's incumbent upon the installer doing the removal to be careful. And that's partly why we don't contract out some of these removal things to just general laborers, and the installer is usually the one that's doing it, and they just have a greater mind for care and for understanding of job sites and what potentials could be could be issues. So yeah, it's due care. And then, to be honest, sometimes I was just thinking of a really good friend of mine. We did his floor and we were removing a subfloor because the cork that was glued down to it became one with the subfloor. And, we were zipping the subfloor, or the installer was, with a skill saw, and it hit a nail. And then the nail shot into the front of his glass stove and blew up the glass.
Oh my gosh.
So that's one of those things, no matter how careful you are, it's like these kind of fluke accidents can happen. So of course we helped him source and get a new glass front and installed on his stove. But
Wow.
yeah, just having a care and understanding, and, working with floors every day, as our installers do, they kind of see some of the issues that could come up.
Great conversation. And I'm going to wrap up this with a small story that when I was learning to be a project manager many years ago, before I became your brand ambassador, headed out onto a job site with your installers, and they were doing grinding of the floor because they had poured it up. It was a new build, but it was still concrete in the subfloor. And they were using the grinder. And it's like, well, I want to learn, the diamond blade grinder where you hold it down. And they said, you're not wearing any knee pads, because they're down on the floor in their knee pads grinding away. And I took out my insoles and put my knees down on my insoles on my shoes so I could learn what it's like to do this very necessary, dirty job in order to protect ultimately the warranty of the product. Because we all know this, the suppliers will point a finger really, really closely, quickly, going and ask those tough questions about what was the subfloor like? How was it prepared?
For sure. And you found out, I'm sure, that it's not a fun job. So it's,
No.
this is part of my appreciation for anybody who works with their bodies and with their hands to do work. Like it's really, really difficult work at times. And it's, like you said, it has to be done. And then, you could skip that step to not do that to yourself and to your body, but now you're not putting the correct product down for the client, and you're not, their floor isn't going to be warranted at that point, whether the client knows that or not, which I'm quite convinced most people don't know, that they're actually not getting a warranty with their floor because it wasn't installed to the specification. But maybe that's a whole nother topic that we could get into.
I love it. Okay, so thank you, Kevin, for indulging me about this crazy video that I saw while we took a little break in March about installing a hardwood floor over tile. Whether that was a good idea, a bad idea, or somewhere in between. I think we've wrapped it up very well. We got the facts, we got the myths, and now we're going to move on to a new topic next week, Wednesday at 10 on Fast Facts and Features with me, Jeanette, the brand ambassador, and Kevin, the owner of Ethical Flooring. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Jeanette. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.